The 0-2 pitch, swing and a miss, struck him out. The Philadelphia Phillies are 2008 World Champions of Baseball.
Philadelphia Eagles are Super Bowl champions. Eagles fans everywhere, this is for you.
That doesn't sound like the usual intro to the Rule 34 podcast. Well, let me explain a bit. So first off, there's a ton of things to get to. I want to recap it quickly so we can get into this episode. First off, as you all know, Dom and I use the recording studio Spreaker to record our podcast episodes. And we were coming up on running out of space, actually, because the subscription that we have allows us 100 hours of space to record. And we were at 99 hours. So I had to go out and buy, a USB. And I downloaded all the episodes off of Spreaker. They're safely backed up onto this drive. And then we deleted the ones. And those will probably disappear from stuff like Apple Podcasts, Spotify, But they stay up on YouTube since that's a separate system. So all our episodes are still up on YouTube if you want to go listen back to an old episode. But all the stuff will probably be gone off of Apple Podcasts and Spotify sometime soon because we had to make the space. And this is probably the way we will continue to make space. Anytime that the storage limit is coming up, I'll just back up the episodes. And anytime people want to watch old episodes, consider the YouTube the archive section of it, where any episode that we recorded will be up there. Now, on to this. Today is Thursday. Usually don't record podcasts on Thursdays. And as you heard the intro, nothing like the usual intro. Well, as Mr. Solis told Dom and I when we were starting this, we asked him, should we do an introduction episode? And he said the advice he gave us was to just go head on from the start, because you don't want to, or the listeners will get to know you through the episodes and as the episodes go on. So I won't take up a majority of an episode explaining this, but so as you heard in the intro, you heard baseball, wrestling, and football. So I am a Philadelphia fan in all sports, thanks to my dad. And, thanks to the players from each of those sports that introduced me to baseball, So I'm a Phillies fan, a 76ers fan, and an Eagles fan. Now, I cover wrestling with Mr. Solis on a, I guess you would call it a branch of the podcast where we do wrestling reviews of the pay-per-views. And then, there's the Rule 34 podcast with Dom. Now, this isn't me, saying anything about Dom, but Dom isn't a sports fan, so that kind of limits the stuff I can talk about on the podcast. But I checked in with him before this, and he's fine, so don't worry. The Rule 34 podcast isn't going anywhere. Just like the wrestling branch, I kind of want to consider this a separate branch. I want to call it GameDay, and what it is, I'm going to be covering different sports news on here, like the NFL draft's coming up soon. I expect to do an episode on that, but I also expect to cover full games. Like today, I didn't watch these 2 full games, but I watched essentially the halves of them, and I want to give my analysis on it because the gist of it, ever since I was younger and really started getting into sports, I really loved analysis, and like I've explained on the podcast, it goes the same for music and everything else. I really like getting into the details with things. And so I really started getting into sports, and there was guys, especially the big one was like Stephen A. Smith. I know, very, how would you say, polarizing figure, I guess you could call him, because a lot of times, people feel he doesn't have the best takes, or, it seems a lot of times like he doesn't even watch a lot of the games. But what I love so much about him was not only the journey to the point where he is now, where he has, that $1 million contract, or like $1 million+ contract with ESPN. But, it's that, like I said, he's polarizing. He has that personality that kind of makes it hard not to watch him, which is why he's the man he is today, He got there by being himself, all the iconic memes of him, and that's why I really enjoyed him, because despite, what people want to say, he has that passion, and it in turn makes it so that people want to tune in to watch him, and that kind of really inspired me when I started getting into sports analysis. But then, if I'm going to be truthful here, I kind of gave up on even looking at it as a potential career because of, it's very niche. It's probably very difficult to get in, and as most people would show you, because not everyone's a Stephen A. Smith or, a Colin Cowherd or, a lot of those guys like, Shaq Ernie, and them. Not everyone can be that, or, a YouTuber I love, King of the Fourth Quarter Kenny, he said that when he would talk about that crew of Charles Barkley, Kenny Jet Smith, Shaq, and Ernie Johnson, he said he knew in his life he couldn't be a Shaq or a Charles Barkley, but he could be an Ernie Johnson, and that's kind of how I feel too, because Ernie wasn't a basketball player as for the most part that I know of. He wasn't, but he's just a guy, but people really enjoy watching him and the rest of the crew, but that's someone that we can look at, I don't have an eighth of the athletic ability that Shaq does, but by honing my craft as a sports analyst, who's to say I can't become like an Ernie Johnson, a Stephen A. Smith, especially I really love Stephen A. Smith's journey because he went to I want to say 2-3 different colleges. He was doing radio, I believe he said, and broadcasting for colleges at some point, and it was just a slow grind as he built himself up to the top. But like I said, in school I didn't really even bother pursuing it and getting serious about it because just the whole risk of it, it's like a leap of faith. It doesn't make as much money. It's very risky because, like I said, it's a niche and all that, but it was something I loved, but I put it to the side because, much like you'll see with my character overall, I am the guy who's willing to sacrifice a lot of stuff if it means for the sake of other people, and during that time I sacrificed what I would consider probably the one dream I ever had in life because I cared more about what other people were telling me and more so, taking care of my family. And so, I just listened to whatever anyone else is telling me. And, I think Dom and I have spoken on length, that, the schools need to do a better job, just the school system in general. They need to do a better job at analyzing the skill sets of students and really helping them find careers because, like I said multiple times on the podcast, I was told, go into engineering, go into this and this, and it was no one was ever looking at my skills. And so, I mean this in a humble way, I'm not saying any of this to brag, but I get so into analysis and get so into breaking stuff down, my skill set is really good at that, and no one really cared about it because it didn't make as much money, or it wasn't going to lead me to a career where I made much money. But then recently, I was talking with Oscar. Those of you may know he used to be on this podcast and in our school podcast. And I don't really ever remember telling him about me wanting to get into sports journalism, but he told me, you should look into it and see what colleges have any type of program that would allow you to get into it because I know you're really good in it. And, if it's a leap of faith, I can't, he was telling me he can't speak from my perspective because he's not the one taking the leap of faith, but he thinks I should. And, recently I've had a lot of time on my hands, and so I've been watching more and more, games of baseball, basketball even, because a lot of times I just catch the highlights, maybe just check the box score, see what people on Twitter and Instagram were saying, but that was about it. But now I'm really watching the games, and I realized, you know what, why not? It's not what's the risk? If I fail, so what? So this is kind of what this is, to kind of get my foot in the door, get a step ahead into the sports journalism world. And so with that being said, let's get right into it. this is, like I said, I consider this a branch of the Rule 34 podcast. It's not its own separate thing. And like Dom said, he likes that I'm doing this, and he hopes I succeed, because it's only for the betterment of the podcast. Because like I promised him, I will not value any branch over the other. I will not prioritize any branch over the other, and I will put all effort into each individual branch. So, like I said at the beginning, the Rule 34 podcast isn't going anywhere. Just consider this a branch. And so let's get right into the first game day. The first game, Phillies versus the Rockies. Now, this was a good game. It finished with a score of 9-6, and my goodness, did things really pick up. Castellanos had, his stat line was 2 runs, 3 hits, 1 RBI. Schwarber had 3 runs, 1 hit, and 2 RBIs. And, of course, RBIs, runs batted in. And, the both of them really took over this game, especially Castellanos. I don't think, he didn't strike out once. He was on fire this entire game. And, he was very smart, like the announcers were saying. He was targeting certain areas that he knew he could get that ball off into and wouldn't result in any outs or any, just any errors. And then, Schwarber himself had himself a game too. Real Muto struggled a bit, but that was because, especially late in the game, they showed his stats versus the pitcher. And this man's stats were pretty insane against this pitcher in his career. So, like they were saying, this pitcher was definitely not going to give JT any balls down the middle for him to hit, because he probably knew what his stat line looked like against him. And then the main player I want to highlight is Alec Bohm, our third baseman for the Phillies. My goodness, man. So I know Philly fans were giving him a lot of flack because he had that 3-error game. But this man, as he's getting more time, he really knows his baseball. More specifically, when it comes to batting, he is so smart and knows when a sacrifice fly ball has to hit. He hit one earlier in the game, which I believe allowed, it was either Schwarber or Harper to get a run in, and get us the score. But his most important sacrifice fly ball came in the 7th. The Phillies were up 6-4, and he hit a fly ball. Or no, they were up 5-4, and he hits a fly ball that allows them to go up 6-4. And at this point, they have 2 outs. So after that, they have 2 outs. This allows Johan Camargo, I hope I'm pronouncing that right, to go up and hit a 3-run homer to put us up 9-4, which we would effectively hold the lead for a bit until the one negative about this team that people have been saying since they made these signings, and it's shown in these games and it showed here, is the defense, where we held up that score pretty well until we allowed them to kind of come back, and it was 9-6, but thankfully that's what the game ended at. Pitching came through, but there were a couple plays like the announcers even pointed out there was a play where Schwarber thought like the ball was going to go for a homer, but it went like right over his head. So like that was kind of a fault play on defense, and that kind of allowed the score to get in. But man, this was a crazy game for the Phillies. They were on a hefty losing streak, if I remember correctly, but they came back here. They did pretty well. I'm proud of them for this play. It was really a game of 2 halves, because my goodness, from the 6th inning onward, they did their best. I know there was no scores in the 8th or the 9th, but my goodness, that 7th inning. If you can go watch one inning from this game, go watch that 7th inning. The Phillies had scored 5 runs, and the Rockies scored 2. This was a pretty good baseball game. I know a lot of people have their opinions on baseball, and really feel like it's a boring sport, but when games are like this, man, there's nothing better than to watch. I really enjoyed watching this game, where the Phillies their standings right now, they're 5-8. It's not looking too great. Hoping they can pick up the pace. Obviously the main how would you say it? The main flaws of this team are the bullpen. Obviously, it's been an issue for the Phillies for a long time, and just the defense. But you don't really got to worry about the defense too much when you got the lineup of Rhys Hoskins, Bryce Harper, Nick Castellanos, JT Realmuto, Kyle Schwarber, and then throwing in guys who know how to, play their role in Gene Segura, Alec Bohm, and Johan Camargo, who are able to just, that whole lineup is just able to hit. And there's a couple games where they've gotten shut out or they only get hits late into the game where they kind of struggle to get hot from the start, but that's kind of to be expected with this team. As a fan of Philadelphia sports, you all would find it very logical that I don't ever really get my expectations too high up. There's a funny meme, and it's a good meme, where it shows like all the Philly sports logos, the Phillies, the Sixers, the Eagles, the Flyers, and it's that meme with the two astronauts in space with one of them holding a gun to the other, and it was all suffering, and it's like it's always has been suffering as a Philly sports fan. Which, transitioning into, I didn't get to watch this game because it wasn't on TV, but the Sixers and the Raptors played, and from what I was hearing and what I was seeing, Embiid really struggled in the start, but boy did he pick it up in the second half, and then he hits a buzzer beater, and you don't understand how angry I was at the fact that I couldn't get to watch this buzzer beater in overtime because they weren't showing it on TV. I believe the game they were showing was I know they were showing the Celtics and Nets, and I'm going to get into that because that was the game I watched from the third quarter onward. And then they showed the Bulls versus the Bucks, which I didn't watch. But man, I was really upset that I didn't get to watch this. Anytime I miss a game from my Philadelphia sports, it really sucks. Thankfully, my dad's since my dad has us under T-Mobile actually offers MLB TV for free, so I don't really get to miss Phillies games. I can watch them whenever I want for free. But I didn't get to see that Sixers game, but the Sixers go up 3-0. A lot of people kind of weren't expecting a sweep, but there's really nothing much to it other than Embiid is just that dominant. I know people are going to get into the fouls argument and the whole flopping thing, but really he's just that dominant of a center. A lot of the guys on Toronto are really undersized, if I still remember the roster correctly. And a lot of people thought that would be an advantage because we've seen a lot of big centers struggle against smaller guards, like Jokic this series. I mean, he's still in his bag, but Jokic at times struggles when he's being guarded by Draymond, But Embiid's just powering through it all, and I'm biased because I'm a Philly fan, but I think he should be MVP. He's just been dominating. I know they'll probably give it to Jokic because he has the better advanced stats, and the whole argument is that he truly is his best player because who is his other best player since Jamal Murray and Michael Porter Jr. are both out on the Nuggets and have been out for a while, so he's been really carrying that team. But I don't know. I think people are really going to hold it against him this year if he goes out in the first round again, which is likely because they're really struggling against that Warriors team. You got a lot of the Nuggets players now arguing with each other, as we saw. And Jokic himself even ended up getting ejected from the game, I'm pretty sure, or fouled out, one of the two. So that MVP argument is going to be absolutely crazy to see what happens. I'm predicting a Jokic back-to-back, and it really sucks because Embiid really did have a really great season, kind of like last season, but it's going to get overshadowed. I'm just hoping next season he can get it, but overall, I take a chip over an MVP, and I think Embiid feels the same way. Our next game, though, as I mentioned, the Celtics versus Nets game, I saw the third and fourth quarter of this game, and what a tale of two halves. Oh my goodness. In late third quarter, the Nets were taking over. Boston was really struggling to get anything from three. Anything. And then they were also struggling a bit on the inside shots. And the Nets were going on a good run where guys like Patty Mills and Nick Claxton were playing their roles pretty well. They were scoring. They were knocking down the threes that they got. They were creating space. And then we get to the fourth quarter, and it's an entire different story. I couldn't believe the game I was watching when this was all going down, man. It was insane to watch. Like, Boston completely took over and controlled the momentum over Brooklyn. Like, I couldn't believe it. By the 4-minute mark, Brooklyn had only scored, I think the graphic showed, 2 points. 2 points. I know Boston's identity this whole season has been their defense, but my goodness, their defense stepped it up in comparison to the third quarter. They were locking guys down. And not only that, they started getting smart with their shot selection. They were taking the 3-point shots when they got the separation, when, the pick and rolls were opening space for them. And then when the threes weren't open, they were using those pick and rolls to drive in and get a layup, get a pass out to an easy 2 or easy 3, And the other thing, too, because of how badly, in a sense, Brooklyn's defense was slacking off, the other thing, too, was that their defense was being ruthless, but it was also smart. They weren't causing unnecessary fouls, but yet they were still being disruptive. Like, at the end of the game, they showed these different highlights where, 2 defenders would get on KD and just really cause him to bobble that ball up, where they disrupt the passing lanes. Like, it really got intense. But as you watch, their defense was really smart. They weren't initiating unnecessary contact that would cause a foul, whereas there was a play where Andre Drummond literally swooped his arm down on Al Horford. Like, that was a completely unnecessary foul. Like, Brooklyn kind of really got undisciplined towards the end of the game, and that's probably likely due to frustrations, because like I said, by the 4-minute mark they had only scored 2 points. By the 2-minute mark they had only scored, I want to say, like 4 or 6 points. They were really struggling against this Boston defense, and they were just really looking sloppy, whereas Boston was controlling the momentum to all this. Nets were giving them terrible fouls, which allowed Boston to either get the easy points through free throws or give them more time of possession, which is what ended up hurting the Nets towards the end of this game, because Boston had like a 10-point lead and the Nets really couldn't do anything because they just kept letting Boston get that ball and hold it for a majority of time. They really lost this game due to that time of possession in the fourth quarter. Those sloppy fouls gave Boston more time. Boston's defense just really stepped it up. I couldn't believe their defense, man. And then, like I said, they were just taking the smart shots. Peyton Pritchard was really stepping it up in this fourth quarter. Jason Tatum, of course, is that guy, that 3-point essentially dagger right before the 2-minute mark where he gives them the 10-point lead was insane. That shot was crazy. And that Boston defense just knew how to get under Brooklyn's skin, especially KD. KD still had like 25, 26, 1-2, but my goodness, if you looked at the field goal percentages for that Brooklyn team, especially in the fourth quarter, my goodness, they really struggled. And so Boston goes up 2-0. This is a game, this is not a game, this is a series that I thought would be going to 7. I still think it has the possibility to. I think, Kyrie and Durant can definitely get a game or 2 out of Boston, especially back in Brooklyn. But who knows, man? If the defense for Boston keeps playing like this, they're gonna be scary. I'm telling you. And if Brooklyn does find a way to steal this series away, I don't think anyone should look at the Celtics as pretenders. A lot of people are looking at the Grizzlies right now and saying they're pretenders because they're struggling against that Timberwolves team. People are calling the Nuggets pretenders, but as I mentioned, it's really hard to call them that because though they have a deep team, they've been missing Jamal Murray and Michael Porter Jr. But I don't think, even if Boston goes out in this first round, I don't think they can be looked at as pretenders because if they're going out, I don't think they're going out on a blowout. If Boston were to go out, they're going out in a hard-fought game that comes down to like a score of 5, And that goes for any point on, If they beat Brooklyn and advance to the second round and lose, if they make it to the Eastern Conference Finals and lose, they're still not going to be pretenders. If you make it that far, there's no way people can call you pretenders. But I don't think there's any way this Boston team gets exposed because that defense is just too good. Their smart selections are really great. Their passing game is really great. Their ball movement was crazy in that last fourth quarter. I think that was another thing that really threw Brooklyn off, was just they were passing it all around that court, and they really struggled to figure out which guy they were going to on which play. And it was just overall a really great effort by that Boston team. And like I said, I don't think they can be labeled pretenders at any point, even if they go out in the first round. Obviously, changes might have to happen because you need something to propel you past that first round. But even if they go out in the first round, it won't be, I wouldn't label them as pretenders because of the fact that it's going to be close, which is why I had this series going 7. Who knows? Maybe like the Sixers, they surprise everyone and look to make it a sweep. But I don't know. KD and Kyrie would really have to fall off in order for this Boston team to sweep. They'd have to have more performances like they did in the fourth quarter in the next 2 games in order for Boston to get that sweep, and I don't see that happening. KD and Kyrie, I really doubt let another game like this happen. So I could definitely see it going to 7, but I think I still at that point might give the edge to Boston just because, like I said, their defense is phenomenal. It's been their identity this whole game. It's been their identity since they went on, I want to say since the All-Star break where they just went crazy. Like, this team was like literally like 500 at one point, and then they went and won like 30 games right after. It was insane effort from this Boston team, and this was a really great game. And the final part I want to get into, as I mentioned, NFL draft's going to be coming next week. I'll be covering that. You'll probably see me cover more games. And Oscar might join from time to time as we cover a Dodger game. And, any other baseball-related news, like if a trade happens, I'll probably get Oscar on here to talk about it. But as you heard from the intro, the clips were playing. The clips that played, obviously, you could tell from the clips. But it's the Phillies winning the World Series in 2008. Glad I got to see that with my dad. It's Sami Zayn winning the NXT Championship, which is going to tie into this next thing I'm going to talk about. And it is the Eagles winning the Super Bowl, and that's Merrill Reese on the call. And Harry Callis was the one that was calling the Phillies game. Merrill Reese, the one who always calls the Eagles game. Personal favorite announcer from my dad and I. We got to watch that Super Bowl amazing moment again, just like the Phillies winning. But I included the Sami Zayn clip because there's going to be times where maybe I want to cover something wrestling wise from like on here, and because Mr. Solis and I cover the pay-per-views, but there's some times where maybe a TV match happens, or maybe like just maybe there's a match I want to cover like from back in the day, give my analysis on it. That's all this is really, this branch of the podcast. Like I said, just me getting that step in and really getting into that sports analysis. And so the wrestling kind of like news I want to talk about here is AEW and New Japan Pro Wrestling announcing a show together. They announced it last night on Dynamite. I wasn't watching Dynamite because I was watching the Boston freaking game, but I saw the news, really excited for this. This has been rumored essentially since the start, and actually you can't even say it's rumored from the start because a lot of people thought there was heat from the start between AEW and New Japan because the elite left New Japan to form their own company, and there was the whole thing of they left on bad terms with New Japan. But as we've seen in the rise in the past years, we've seen a lot of New Japan Pro Wrestling's talent show up. We saw Minoru Suzuki, Tomohiro Ishii, Kenta showed up, Jay White showed up for a match. We've seen guys like Mox, Eddie Kingston, who else? Daniel Garcia. They've shown up on New Japan Strong, the US-based promotion for New Japan. So there's been a working relationship for like the past year or so, between the two companies. It's no surprise that at this point they finally are now making the announcement. What is the date? June 23rd, I believe. Yeah, June 23rd is going to be this crossover show. It will probably be something very similar. June 26th. That is the last Sunday of June. It'll probably be something very similar to the New Japan versus Noah show that they had earlier this year as like Wrestle Kingdom Night 3. And it should be real good. We already have Tomohiro Ishii versus Adam Cole announced for, I want to say it's Rampage this Friday, for like the Owen Hart qualifying tournament, which should be good. But yeah, a lot of people have high hopes for this. People obviously expect a lot of the Bullet Club stuff to transfer over here, and it should be real good, as far as matches that I'd want to see, but also other people want to see. I think one of the obvious ones that people want to see is Kenta versus CM Punk. They both use the GTS, and so I fully expect that match to maybe happen, but I don't know. See, because the whole issue here is how's the booking gonna go? Because no matter how the booking goes, I feel like people are gonna be like, oh, it's just AEW putting themselves over, or oh, why is this guy winning over this guy? But that's the one thing I just don't understand about the fans is why do you want a super show if you're gonna complain about the booking? Obviously, somebody has to go over. Not every match can end in a draw, no contest. But I think this could work because I don't know. I think New Japan would probably let Kenta lose this match. Get CM Punk to win, or maybe because I know oh my gosh, Hiroshi Tanahashi. Tanahashi said himself that he wants to face Danielson and Punk, but I don't know with the run Punk is on right now. I don't see him facing Tanahashi now because I don't know. Would New Japan let Tanahashi lose this match? I really don't think they would. I mean, who knows? I don't know much about the business, so who knows? But that would also be a good match. But with the run Punk is on, I think they'll probably give him someone that they know or that they can negotiate and know that they can lose to Punk. Who like? It's literally just picking out of a hat names that who can face Bryan Danielson at this pay-per-view because literally anyone can face him and he'd turn it into a 5-star match. I love Bryan Danielson. This man can face he won't face Okada unless well maybe they could have him face Okada and since Danielson's doing the Blackpool Combat Club stuff, they can have him eat a loss. This isn't like when he was going to go against Hangman and they needed him to look like a credible world champion challenger, which doesn't really matter. Danielson will always look like a credible world champion challenger, but since he's doing that stuff, he could take a loss if he challenges Okada for that IWGP heavyweight title. The dream match, he can face Zack Sabre Jr. in what would be definitely a technical masterpiece between the two. He can face Will Ospreay. I have my own opinions about Ospreay, but I won't get into that. But he can face Ospreay. I've seen a couple people want that match. He could face off against. He faced off against Suzuki or late last year, so maybe not that, but maybe against Tomohiro Ishii. Shingo has to make an appearance. If Naito, I keep forgetting what Naito's status is, but if he's healthy, he has to make an appearance probably. Oh my gosh, Hiromu has to make an appearance, obviously, more than likely against, oh man, could you imagine Hiromu versus Isaiah Swerve Scott or Swerve Strickland? I mean, sorry, I always associate him with his WWE name just because it was kind of more smoother than what he has now. But Shane Strickland, there we go. That's an easier way to refer to him. That would be a pretty good showcase of the junior heavyweights. Or even against Ricky Starks even, because he kind of fits that junior heavyweight status. That would be a good one. Or they can throw in Dante Martin, one of the young guys like that. Yeah, I mean, tag match, you obviously have to have FTR or the Bucks facing someone from New Japan, whether, if we're doing the Bullet Club stuff, whether it's the Young Bucks versus GOD, or even, what are some other tag teams they can face out there? I mean, there's, oh man, I'm kind of struggling to think of some New Japan tag teams now, because Sonata's out, so him and Naito won't be teaming like they were before. But then again, Sonata was also doing his solo stuff with the U.S. Championship before he got injured. But yeah, FTR has to be on that card, I think. I would argue FTR has to be on that card over the Bucks, really, because they're white hot right now. And honestly, expect sometime next week I will more than likely be giving my analysis on Dax and Cash's match that's going to happen this week on Dynamite. I already know it's going to be good. A lot of people really enjoyed Dax's match with CM Punk and we're going crazy about it. I think it's going to be the same here. They're both tag partners, and like they both said, it's a one-time thing because they are a tag team that doesn't want to break up. So this is a very special occasion to see these two guys go at it against each other. And with the Super Show, I'm hoping this means, because I think I heard, I don't know if it's confirmed, but I know Japan supposedly is opening its its travel to foreigners again, which New Japan is hoping to get a lot of their gaijins back. And here's the hoping, because since he's doing the Blackpool Combat stuff, I don't think during this time he will be as invested, in any like title chases. Especially because it's really difficult. I don't know what direction they're going with Blackpool Combat Club. I don't know if they're gonna add guys in, because last night they faced off against like the young team of Lee Moriarty, Dante Martin, and Brock Anderson. And like, who's to say that Lee Moriarty doesn't join? Because I know like the proposition was Daniel Garcia and Lee Moriarty to join, but like people were kind of noticing and analyzing was that Danielson kind of already had matches with those guys and they didn't fight back the way Yuta did. So Yuta was able to join because he showed that aggression to the BCC. And the fact that they challenged Moriarty, and he was still trying to stick with Seidel, and then Garcia was sticking with 2.0 and the Jericho feud, it kind of shows that maybe they aren't going that direction. Because if they were to add a guy like Moriarty, then I would assume Yuta and Moriarty go after like the tag title scene, which kind of seems weird, because then what are Mox and Danielson left to do? But I only argue that because then this opens up time for Danielson to go over and compete in the G1 of New Japan, the G1 tournament. I more than anything would want to see Danielson in that G1. And I would love to see, obviously I'm not going to say send over everyone, because, that's not the point of sending them over, But I would like to see a guy like Dante Martin, compete in the best of the Super Juniors. A guy like Shane Strickland compete in the best of the Super Juniors. I think that would be some real interesting stuff to see. I just thought of it now because I think he faced off against him. I think Shane Strickland faced off against him at a New Japan Strong event. Jay White has to show up at this New Japan AEW crossover show. He most definitely has to. As far as his opponent, oh man, I really don't know, because of the way this elite stuff is going. When Kenny's not coming back. I know people keep fantasy booking Kenny's return, but I genuinely don't think Kenny's returning until like the end of this year, because of the amount of injuries that man had. Like, the injuries that man built up within the past 3 years is insane. Like, this man was talking about wrestling with vertigo, so man, was it pretty insane to see like the list of injuries he's going through. Like, he's just now getting like knee surgery, I think it was, or some type of surgery, and it's like, man, this guy is a warrior. So I don't think he's coming back even remotely close in time for this AEW New Japan show. And if he does, it's not going to be like a long one. I think it's only going to be like a short little exhibition match, But oh man, so that's definitely some stuff that we expect to see. I'm looking at their page right now. Oh my gosh, I can't believe I forgot about this. Desperado is their junior heavyweight champion, so of course we gotta expect to see him at this show. Who would I want to see Desperado against? I think I mentioned it. I would like to see. I want to see a lot of the junior heavyweights go against a lot of the lighter guys that AEW has. Like I said, a Shane Strickland would be nice. Dante Martin can definitely put on a great match. He put on a great match with Hangman I want to say it was like a month ago. There's guys like I don't know if Yuta classifies as a junior heavyweight, but if he fits it, then maybe. Buddy Matthews got too built to be even considered a junior heavyweight at this point. That man is huge. Dante Martin, Darby Allin too. Dante Martin, Darby Allin, Swerve Strickland. These are all guys that could really. I don't think we'll see any challenges for titles really with these guys, but they can put on a good exhibition with a lot of the juniors that New Japan has. Like Desperado, Robbie Eagles, Hiromu, Jeff Cobb and Great O'Khan maybe can make an appearance if they want to have a tag match with someone like FTR. That's something they can definitely use to go down. Who else would I? Man, and like I mentioned, Tanahashi probably has to have a match. John Moxley's probably gonna have a match on this card. It's to be expected. The one question I guess I propose is, do we think more promotions are added to this show, such as Impact, because they have a working deal with New Japan? Do we see AAA involved in any way, Like, is this going to be another all-in situation, or are we just doing solely New Japan AEW crossover? If we're doing solely that, then I think they can suffice. There's a ton of dream matches, like Minoru Suzuki is definitely going to have to show up and have some type of dream match with someone, Like, he has to face... I'm trying to think, because, a lot of these matches... Because a lot of these guys on AEW's roster did come out in New Japan as well. But, so, like, I'm trying to think who can definitely have a good match. Oh, man, I want to see Malachi Black have a match with someone like Suzuki, That would be really good. It's just going to be a real good showcase of the talents on both rosters. Just a ton of dream matches to be had here. And I think the booking's probably going to be pretty even, It's not going to be anything crazy where we see, like, I don't think AEW is the company that's going to make it like, oh, they sweep the show and have all their talents go over. Like, there's no way New Japan agrees, right? No matter what. Yeah, so should be a great show. For sure, Mr. Solis and I will more than likely be covering this pay-per-view. It is going to be a good one. I'm still waiting to see what they announce for Double or Nothing, although that would be tough because I will be out of town during that. Or I won't be out of town during the week, like, the week after Double or Nothing, but I'm going to be out of town, and I'm actually going to be at a wedding the day of Double or Nothing, so I don't know how I'll be able to watch it, especially without spoilers, because as I've mentioned on the wrestling podcast section of this with Mrs. Solis, it's really hard for me to get invested into wrestling matches when I already know the outcome, which is why a lot of matches didn't make our top 10 list. It's because it's just real hard to hear about how great a match was, already know the outcome and get invested into it. Like everyone else, I'm a big Stardom fan. I'm probably going to cover some Stardom matches on here as well, give my analysis, because I really love with the women of Stardom, just like the shows they put on, the presentation that they have, the matches that they put on. But it literally felt like a crime to me last year, at the end of 2021, when I didn't have any Utami versus Sayori matches on there, and that was because anytime I heard about them, I already knew the outcome, and so it was really difficult for me to watch them because I knew people were saying they were match of the year contenders, but because I already knew the outcome, it was such a struggle for me to watch it, Like, I already knew what was going to happen. I didn't know what the spots were going to be, but it was like, it's just like already knowing that outcome hurts it, And also another thing too is it's like the matches went long, like they were pretty long matches. So like, I love a long match and I probably would enjoy it, but like it's one of those things of like, are you willing to sit through an entirety of something when you already know the outcome, Like, imagine going to watch a movie and you already knew the ending. Like, you go watch the Batman movie, or think about it. It was like the people who got No Way Home spoiled for them. Imagine going to it and watching No Way Home, knowing all the stuff that's gonna happen to it. Like, my dad was lucky enough to not see any spoilers. Anytime he heard Spider-Man, No Way Home, he was swiping away, wasn't seeing it. So when he went to see it, he got to see everything for the first time. But imagine someone who's already got the spoilers, and then they're forced to watch it, and it's just not the same to them. That's kind of how I feel about wrestling matches. The moment I know the outcome, it is very difficult to watch, But that being said, this should be a really great pay-per-view put on by the two shows. I think it will bring new eyes, hopefully, to New Japan, and what a perfect time, because like I said, if the borders are opening back up for travel after COVID, it is a perfect time because they'll see more big-name gaijins, gaijins is like foreigners, They're going to see big foreign names that they know already from the States appearing in New Japan, and it's going to draw their attention like it did back when it had a boom period in like 2016 and onward. And so, pretty eventful episode, covered the Phillies Rockies game, Celtics Nets, and the AEW New Japan show. I'll say I probably won't cover as much stuff as I did in here as I'm finishing up this episode. Maybe I will, because 3 stuff was able to fill this 45-minute episode. But with that being said, I thank you all for joining me, allowing me to discuss this stuff that I love, and allowing me to put my foot in the door and hopefully to pursue my dream. No outro yet. Maybe I'll come up with an outro that's as good as the intro. Who knows? But for now, I'll just sign off. I've been your host, Jack, as always. Thank you for joining us for Game Day, and I'll see you soon for the next one.